I thought our road trip would be fun until I discovered these terrifying true horror stories. I never should have opened that door. Curiosity got the best of me, pulling me into the black abyss of the unknown. I was just looking for something to pass the time during our long drive, scrolling through my phone. It was a simple plan: laughter, music, the wind in my hair. But as the stories poured in, one by one, my stomach twisted into knots. Have you heard about the woman who vanished from a rest area, only to reappear months later, mumbling incoherently? Her vacant stare haunted me. What kind of darkness had she encountered? The night felt colder, the shadows creeping closer. I could imagine the chatter of the trees whispering secrets. Then there was the tale of the couple who pulled off for a quick nap. They woke up to find their car surrounded by a circle of stones. No footprints leading in, but signs of someone watching, always watching. The air turned thick with tension, as if the car itself could sense my rising dread. My friends laughed, oblivious, bumping along the deserted road. They joked about ghost towns and creepy hitchhikers, but my heart raced. What if someone really was out there? I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a pair of eyes lurking in the darkness behind us. Suddenly, a loud bang, something slammed against the trunk. My breath hitched. I whipped around, straining to see through the gloom. Nothing but the stretch of asphalt slipping away behind us. My pulse drummed in my ears. "Did you hear that?" I asked, voice barely a whisper. They shrugged, chalking it up to the wind. Though I could feel it, a shiver creeping up my spine. It was wrong. Everything felt wrong. The laughter faded. The whispers grew more pronounced. My fingers trembled against the seat belt as we neared a turnoff. Something flickered in the periphery, an old sign, half fallen, words barely legible. "Welcome to Black Hollow." What had I stepped into? I could almost taste the fear in the air, a sharp metallic tang on my tongue. I felt it, a presence lurking just beyond the reach of light. With every mile, unease wrapped around me like a serpent. I tried to shake it off, focusing on the fading sunlight. But then I heard it again, a soft rustling, like a breath behind me. I turned. And hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The car shuddered as I twisted in my seat, my heart racing with an urgency that felt almost primal. My eyes darted across the rear window, straining to catch a glimpse of whatever had brushed against me, but there was nothing. Just the oppressive blackness swallowing the road behind. "Seriously? You guys didn't hear that?" I begged, trying to quell the rising panic. They shrugged, but their laughter no longer held the same mirth. I noticed the nervous glances exchanged between them. Dark shadows haunted their usual carefree expressions. My unease spread like wildfire, igniting their previously cheerful atmosphere with an ominous undercurrent. "Let us just keep driving," Erin suggested, her voice shaking ever so slightly. I nodded, grateful at least someone felt it too. The flickering headlights danced along the trees that seemed to animate under their glow, grotesque forms twisting and contorting into wicked shapes. Shapes that looked almost human. Then the first chill of night seeped into the car. The temperature dropped, the warmth stolen away as darkness spread from the woods like a creeping fog. The only sounds were the thudding of tires against the asphalt and the faint whispers of the breeze. Yet the whispers grew louder, almost eager, pushing against the confines of the car, wrapping themselves around us, making the air seem thicker, harder to breathe. "Did you see that?" Jake suddenly yelled, his voice piercing through the eerie silence like a scream. We all flinched, swiveling to look out the window where he pointed, but all we caught was a flicker, something darting into the woods. A silhouette. Tall, gaunt. It moved like a wraith among the trees. My stomach lurched. What was it? The jesting had evaporated, leaving behind a suffocating tension where humor once dwelled. "I don't know, man," he replied, teeth clenched. Something, it was too skinny, like it hadn't eaten in ages. The words hung in the air, suffocating. The trees stood like silent sentinels, gnarled branches clawing at the sky. And as we drove deeper into Black Hollow, I could feel a sharp weight hanging over us, pressing down, threatening to crush. Ahead, a flicker of lights glinted through the twisted foliage, another restless spirit, perhaps, or something much worse. Sensing our terror, the shadows around us seemed to deepen, wrapping around the very essence of our being, swallowing what little warmth remained. Might be a gas station up ahead, Aaron murmured, trying to inject hope into the growing dread. I could only respond with a nod, though I could feel the suffocating grip of fear tightening. What awaited us at the bottom of that hill was a ramshackle building, time-worn and battered. Its wooden beams creaked under the pressure of unseen forces. The sign, swaying in the wind, cracked open the air with its ghostly welcome. Rest stop open 24 hours. Let us check it out, Jake urged, but he looked as uneasy as the rest of us. Guys, what if this place is abandoned? Aaron said, eyes darting nervously to the surrounding trees which had taken on a more sinister aspect under the dim fluorescent light. We have to stop. We need gas, I insisted, though every instinct screamed to turn back. As we pulled into the gravel lot, the car groaned, much like the building before us. Despite the lack of visible movement, it felt alive, the wooden structure breathing with the rhythm of the night. Shadows shifted all around, but I refused to let myself spiral into fear. We stepped out, the cold wrapping around us like a suffocating shroud. Darkness clung to the edges, and I could be sworn I felt the weight of more than just the night pressing down, a presence watching, waiting. The dread churned inside my gut. Let us hurry, Jake said, already moving towards the door, but I hesitated. A soft whisper curled around the back of my mind, luring me toward the woods once more. It beckoned, insistent, like a siren-esque call. I turned back to the forest, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a figure framed in the darkness between the trees, staring back. I blinked, and it vanished, leaving only the whispering leaves and my own quickening breath. Guys, I called, but my voice was swallowed by the night, lost to whatever lay waiting just beyond our reach. The others had entered the building, leaving me standing alone, caught between the enveloping darkness of the woods and the flickering shadows within. With a final shiver, I stepped inside, dread coiling tighter. The inside of the rest stop felt like stepping into the past, a grainy film flickering before my eyes. The air hung thick with the stench of decay, and the flickering fluorescent lights above cast erratic shadows along the walls. And then I heard it again, the whisper clearer now, and it echoed eerily through the dark walls. Help me! I froze, a chill racing down my spine. It didn't seem to come from anywhere inside the building. I turned to face the door, preparing to call for the others when suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me in the depths of an unholy entanglement of shadows. Nausea churned in my stomach as I faced the darkness pressing in around me. Let me out, I shouted, panic rising in my throat. There was no response, only the relentless echo of that haunting whisper, drawing ever closer. And then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, a woman, gaunt and hollow-eyed, lips curling in a bone-chilling smile as she stepped into the flickering light. Behind her, shadows writhed, tinged with malevolence, and I realized too late. Something was coming for me. What had I unwittingly awakened? The fluorescent light buzzed angrily as I stumbled back, the floor beneath my feet feeling like it was shifting, threatening to swallow me whole. The woman's presence wrapped around me, an aura of dread so palpable it made it hard to breathe. Her hollow eyes, dark and endless like the abyss, seemed to want to pull me into their depths. Help me, she crooned, each word dripping with a sorrow so profound it resonated deep within my bones. Despite the instinct to run, I found myself rooted to the spot, wavering on the precipice of fear and impossible compassion. Her skeletal finger pointed towards the back of the room, where darkness pooled like spilled ink, thick and suffocating. I blinked, heart pounding against my ribs, and I could have sworn I saw movement in the shadows, a shape shifting, alive with the malice of its own. Stay away, I gasped, my voice unsteady. But she didn't react. Instead, she leaned closer, her breath stirring the dust motes like secrets lost to time. Please find them. Her whisper hung in the air, laced with an urgency that clenched my heart like a vice. I felt a pull towards her, an inexplicable need to understand the horror behind those vacant eyes. Just then, Jake and Aaron burst through the door, their faces pale, and behind them, a gust of biting wind swept into the room as if the darkness from outside had escaped its prison. "Gwen, what's wrong?" Aaron's voice trembled as they noticed the woman. "She needs help?" I started, feeling the weight of their disbelief settle over me like a shroud. "Help? Gwen, that woman looks dead," Jake exclaimed, eyeing her with the kind of fear that should have served as a warning. "We need to get out of here." He grabbed my arm, but I shook him off. "No, she needs us." My retort was weak, but in that moment, I was anchored by an unyielding sensation that the woman was a beacon, the key to this nightmare. The shadows at the back of the room swelled, pulsing almost as if they had a heartbeat of their own. I finally tore my eyes away from the woman to face the dark mass. The walls themselves seemed to pulse and breathe, singing a terrible song that filled my head with drowning notes of despair. "Please," the specter rasped, fingers reaching with an ethereal grace. "You must understand." Suddenly, a low, guttural growl erupted from the shadows, sending cold spikes of fear racing down my spine. It felt almost sentient, a warning that everything was about to deteriorate. As I locked eyes with the growing darkness, I saw flashes, horrific images streaking past like a reel of gruesome film. Faces twisted in anguish, mouths open in silent screams, and then something that looked uncannily like Jake's face, pale and dripping, fading into the inky void that in that instant. I felt the collective panic thrum between us. "Get out!" Aaron screamed, pulling me towards the exit. But the door slammed shut once more, this time violently, rattling on its hinges as if some unseen force was determined to keep us inside. "You need to listen," the woman cried, her voice now a desperate shriek, reverberating through the walls. I grasped at the fraying edges of reason, breathless, as the shadows convulsed, and from within them, tendrils of darkness reached for us, caressing our skin like icy hands grasping at our souls. I felt that hopeless grip as it wound around my ankle, pulling me backward toward the woman, who still offered a grin that sent a jolt of revulsion through me. "Help me help my children," she whispered again, and in those words, I felt the weight of 1,000 wrongs borne into an aching silence. "No, let go of her," Jake shouted, shoving against the wall, but it was as futile as pushing against the tide. Aaron's eyes were wide with horror. "What children? What do you want?" Her plea was drowned in the rush of oncoming shadows, a swarm that felt predatory. Without thinking, I lunged to grab the woman's hand. "What do we do?" I yelled, my voice cracking against the swell of darkness that threatened to consume us. As our hands touched, a blinding flash enveloped the room. In that moment, I saw everything, twisted forms of the past, trapped in a cycle of pain, hunger, and despair. I saw the children, ghosts of a time long lost, faces smeared with grief, endlessly reaching for solace, and the darkness the harbinger of their torment. Then, just as abruptly, everything went black, and then came the silence that I blinked. The brightness returned, but we were no longer in the rest stop. We were outside, the ground icy beneath my feet, beneath a pallid moon that cast a muted glow on a graveyard of crumbling stones. Where are we?" I breathed, panic surging through me again as my heart hammering against my ribcage amplified the choking stillness. "No," Aaron wailed, her voice cracking. "It grabbed us." As I scanned our surroundings, dread unfurled like a flower in my chest. There they were, the spectral children, standing eerily still, their faces obscured by shadows, yet their eyes were locked onto mine. And then the shadows around us pooled together, darkening with intent, revealing forms that were too long and too spindly, eyes like burning coals glimmering in the silence. The darkness was alive. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came. As the figures advanced, a breath of wind chilled me to the core, while whispers erupted, demanding to be heard. "Help, help, help," and in that moment, I realized the one thing that might shatter our fragile hold on sanity. The cries were not just from the shadows, but from within us, begging to be let free. But before I could process the implications, the ground beneath me shattered, and I was falling into the abyss as that hollow smile followed me into the dark. The darkness swallowed me whole, a viscous black that clung to my skin and choked the breath from my lungs. I felt no solid ground, just the sensation of weightlessness that morphed into a gut-wrenching panic. I was falling deeper and deeper into a void that felt alive and pulsating, each beat of its heart resonating through my very core. "Help!" I gasped, but the word barely escaped my lips before it was snatched away by the darkness. Time lost all meaning, disintegrating into fragments of soundless screams and fleeting memories. I thought of Jake and Aaron, of their faces twisted in terror, and the woman with her haunting plea. Had I cursed us all by trying to reach out to her? Suddenly, with an abrupt jolt, I landed hard on a cold, uneven floor. I blinked, heart racing, as I tried to gather my bearings amidst the oppressive gloom. The air was thick, suffused with the scent of damp earth and decay. My pulse throbbed in my ears as I forced myself to look around. I was inside a small, cramped space, the walls pulsating slightly as if alive. "Aaron, Jake," I called, my voice shaking as it echoed back, mocking and hollow. There was no response, just an oppressive silence that thickened the air like a fog. Desperate, I tugged at the edges of my memory, trying to recall what had happened. The shadows, the children, the woman's twisted face, had this all been a trap? As I pushed myself to my feet, the shadows began to writhe along the walls, swirling and intermingling like a dark mist. I stumbled back against a hard surface, and my fingers brushed against something cold and smooth. My heart dropped as I turned to discover an old mirror, its edges framed with rusted iron. But the reflection was not just my own. It was a warped image of something twisted and awful, a grotesque mimicry of humanity. I felt bile rise in my throat as I stepped away, but the mirror seemed to pull me back in, dragging me closer to the truth I dared not confront. "Help me," a voice whined, drenched in despair. The sound curled around me, a chilling echo that seemed to seep from the mirror itself. I dared to peer closer, and teetered on the verge of retaliation and desperation. Within the glass, shadows danced, mingling with shapeless figures that clawed at a light I couldn't see. Their silent screams etched into the surface as if it were flesh. Memories rushed back of children lost and souls trapped, of that woman, her pale face twisted in suffering. The chill of realization swept over me like freezing water. We weren't escaping. We were ensnared in a tapestry of their pain, stitched together with our own fear. "Gwen," a voice pierced through the quiet, and I spun around. Jake stood there, pale and trembling, the shadows encroaching on him like ravenous beasts. "Gwen, over here. I can't find Aaron." His eyes were wild, filled with a terror I had never seen before. I felt a sting of desperation at the mention of her name, the sound twisting painfully, weaving through the silence around us. "We need to find her now." Suddenly, the ground beneath us quaked violently, and the walls began to close in, covered in tears where the shadows clawed and pressed. The entities within them were no longer just obscured figures. They took shape, their faces contorted in an endless loop of anguish, eye sockets hollow, mouths wide in silent wails trailing off into nothingness. "Stay close," I shouted, trying to steady my breath, pulling Jake toward the only exit that shimmered dimly at the other end of the cramped room. With each hurried step, the shadows inched closer, and whispers clawed at the edges of sanity. "Help us. Help. Help." As we approached the exit, I caught a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye, the same ghastly figure of the woman emerging from the shadow. I froze, a primal instinct gripping my chest. The woman reached a clawed hand towards us, her hollow gaze piercing through the darkness, whispering, "You must see the truth." Before I could scream, the shadows surged forward, a mass of swirling darkness. We stumbled into the door just as the shadows enveloped us, and I felt an icy grip latch onto my wrist. Jake's terrified shout lingered in the air, a dying echo, as I was yanked back, and he was forced forward into the light. Time wrenched itself as I fell into a haze. I grasped desperately at the fading image of Jake, pulling against the horror that sought to claim me. But then, as if severed by a brilliant bolt of lightning, the grip released. I was thrown backward into the suffocating darkness, back into that unbearable silence. As the last vision of Jake's frantic face faded into obscurity, I gasped, searching for breath, and when I finally forced my eyes open, I was met again with the cold reality. Darkness surrounded me, but I wasn't alone. The spectral children had returned, their fragmented forms closing in, and their eyes, those mournful, pleading eyes, locked onto mine, transcending words. Suddenly, I felt the oppressive weight of presence behind me, something larger, more sinister. I spun around, and the mirror was there again. Only now it wasn't reflecting any past or future. I stared into a void filled with the faces of the lost, staring right back at me, whispering with unyielding desperation. And then, beside me, the woman's voice surged, clearer than ever. Only one can escape. Choose. Terror clawed my insides as the truth dawned on me. Who would I sacrifice to escape the horrors that entwined us? Would it be Jake or Aaron? Or worse, could it be myself? I felt the chill seep deeper with every beat of despairing potential, the darkness silently laughing at the chaos it had sown, my heart racing. And just as the whispers began to crescendo, I realized it wasn't just a choice, it was a sentence. And before I could respond, shadows erupted around me, swallowing my voice, dragging me down into their depths. As the shadows tightened their grip, I felt a cold rush of air brush against my face, carrying with it the sentiment of countless souls entwined in unspeakable sorrow. Stars, if they could be called such, glimmered dimly within the swirling mass, flickering like distant memories trapped in time's relentless grasp. My heart raced, caught within a turbulent sea of confusion and dread. Suddenly, a high-pitched giggle echoed through the oppressive atmosphere, trailing like a ghostly refrain. I turned instinctively, heart pounding, and found myself face to face with the children. Their faces were streaked with soot, their eyes large and void of innocence, glimmering in the dim light. They danced around me, their laughter piercing, yet fizzling into horrified whispers that licked at the edges of my sanity. "She won't let you go," one of them murmured, his voice a trembling shadow of despair. "You must join us, forever." Panic clawed its way through my veins as I scrambled back against the wall, awareness piercing through my despair. They were not just lost souls. They were a chorus of anguish, waiting to absorb another heart, another life. Yet even in my terror, curiosity gnawed inside of me. Who were they? How did they end up here? And what awaited me within this torment? The woman's voice surged back in my mind, more insistent now than ever, throbbing like a heartbeat. "You will not escape until the truth is unveiled. One must share the burden. One must bear the consequence." At this, a chilling realization sliced through my panic like glass. My thoughts darted wildly to Aaron and Jake, both trapped by this heavy void. Was forcing a choice not just part of their task for survival, but mine, too? Did I even have the right to say whose fate lay in my hands? The ground underfoot trembled, vibrated with a malevolent pulse, compelling me to listen. "Choose wisely," the children sang, their voices now melding into an eerie symphony, rising and falling like a ghastly tide of secrets. "If you do not choose, you will have no choice, not at all." Before I could respond, a low growl percolated through the darkness, and a wave of icy wind swept across the chamber. It tore through the children, erasing them in threads of shadow, leaving only silence in its wake. The laughter abruptly ceased, and in its absence, an ominous weight filled the air, making it nearly impossible to breathe. Then, an unsettling warmth enveloped me, contrasting the chill of the shadows. I turned, facing the mirror one last time, but this time the reflection revealed more than mere anguish. It glowed with a sickly, pulsating light. Behind it loomed a monstrous shape, shrouded within layers of darkness. Its eyes, if they could be called such, burned with a ravenous hunger. It hovered closer, a grotesque grin stitching the space between reality and horror, taunting me that I blinked, desperate to tear my gaze away from the nightmare. But the allure was undeniable. It whispered promises, sweet and sickening, beckoning me into the abyss. The shadows at my feet writhed like serpents, gliding toward the mirror, eager to become part of something, anything that could loathe my very existence. "Choose or perish," it howled, sending ripples of dread cascading through my thoughts. The air thickened with despair as the entities surrounding me clamored, their voices rising in a chaotic crescendo of lost hopes and whispered regrets. Jake flashed in my mind, a frenzied devil of desperation. The walls pulsed again, and I could feel Aaron's absence clamping down on my heart with a vice-like grip. A choice must be made. The burden was now mine to bear alone. Choose, Gwen. The children echoed, their voices melding disappointingly into the sorrowful murmurings of the ghostly woman. Choose now, or forever watch them lose their light. I gritted my teeth, trying to stave off the rising panic that clawed at my throat. My fingers trembled as I recalled their faces, my friends, my family, the bond that tethered us. But in this unnatural realm, there was an inevitable truth lurking beneath the surface, boiling slowly like a sinister potion. Suddenly, a shrieking wail cut through the air, sharp as glass, shaking me to my core. It came from the mirror. No, you cannot choose. The creature unleashed a voice smoother than silk but thick with malice, snapping me back like a taut rope drawn too far. You will never have the chance. Do you not see that merely existing within this space is a choice in itself? That moment when the creature recoiled and I felt shadows curling closer, sending a shiver down my spine. Governed by a twisted instinct, I lunged forward, driven by the primal urge to see and save, my heart pounding violently. And just as I grasped the edges of the mirror, a blinding flash illuminated the chamber, as if sanity itself was shattering. In that fractal glimmer, I snatched a sweeping glance of Jake and Aaron's silhouettes amidst the chaos, both reaching, but not towards me, towards salvation or doom. I could not tell. With my decision racing to the surface, I felt the shadows snap like live wires around me, binding my fate with theirs. The darkness thrashed, wild and unyielding, my heart frenzied with confusion as the mirror pulsed beneath my touch, and a choice erupted forth from my lips, a desperate, unyielding choice. But the light swallowed my voice, and I was consumed before the implication of my act could settle. And then, with staggering clarity, I realized that with the ceaseless cascade of darkness, I had unalterably bound my essence to their fate, and ours was not the only souls enmeshed in their tragic tale. Before I could grasp what had happened, shadows began to twist and stretch, and I felt the sinister presence of something utterly ancient coiling around me, echoing, "New flesh, new sacrifice." Then darkness erupted, a cacophony of whispers burst forth, implicating me as I was dragged down into unfathomable depths, swallowed whole, racing towards the unseen horror waiting just beyond the veil. And then a scream, sharp and crystalline, resonated through the black, a profound shock, weightier than despair, echoing just as the eyes of the children dimmed with an unforgiving dread. You will never be free. The darkness coiled around me, suffocating and unyielding, as if it had limbs of its own, wrapping tighter with each frantic breath I dared to take. Voices, once melodious, twisted into a chaotic clamor, a discordant symphony of anguish and despair, drowning out my thoughts. I felt Jake and Aaron's presence slipping further away, a spectral gauge of my own panic, and I clawed forward, grasping at the fading light of their silhouettes. Then I began to fall, plummeting into an abyss where time and space unfurled like rotting fabric, revealing the ghastly tapestry of a history riddled with suffering and loss. The shadows morphed into grotesque faces, distorting into expressions of pure agony, each one whispering tales of despair too grave to comprehend. I landed harshly on a cold stone floor that throbbed with life, as if it were a heart beating with hatred. Dust swirled around me, forming a thick haze that clawed at my senses. I blinked, trying to orient myself, when the air shifted and I suddenly felt eyes upon me, countless, unblinking eyes, attentive and devoid of warmth. Before me lay a colliginous expanse, an endless hall adorned with spectral murals, each depicting moments frozen in time, the twisted, sorrowful figures of those who had come before me, entangled in elegance yet stripped of hope. I stumbled forward, the sheer weight of their sorrow pressing upon me like lead. There was an intoxication in their suffering, and I felt the urge to yield to it, to become part of their desolate dance. The echo of laughter returned, this time deeper and more foreboding, reverberating against the remnants of hope clinging to my soul. "Welcome, welcome!" It flitted through the air like a caress turned vice. I turned in desperation, scanning the malevolent horizon for any sign of my friends. But as the shadows writhed nearer, it became apparent that I was utterly alone in this wretched plain. In the flickering gloom, The childlike figures emerged once more, their faces twisted in a mocking semblance of joy. They surrounded me in a cruel circle, their laughter intertwining with whispers that echoed tales of the damned. "They're coming for you, too," one of them sneered, his tone suffused with malicious glee. "You'll never escape." A shiver coursed through my veins. The air thickened, and emotions erupted: rage, guilt, terror, all merging into one horrible swell. Images of Jake's desperate gaze and Aaron's unwavering strength clashed violently with the grotesque spectacle before me. I would not let them claim my spirit. The mural shifted, the figures twisting their grotesque mouths into wide grins of despair, beckoning me. They were alive, the wretched souls of my predecessors. "Join us. Become one with the shadow," they chorused, their voices melding into a monolithic plea that sank deep within my heart. But in that moment, a fierce determination burned within me. "No," I screamed, forcing the words past the oppressive gloom. "You won't have me. Not now, not ever." Instantly, the laughter of the children turned to shrieks of surprise, their eyes glistening with something akin to fear, yet the oppressive force of the shadows only intensified. The ground quaked, rung with jeering voices. "You are ours," they echoed, dissonant and hollow. "You cannot defy us." Suddenly, the hall transformed, walls closing in, and panic surged with the velocity of a storm surging over an unsuspecting sea. I sprinted, desperate to slip through the tightening periphery, dodging phantoms grasping for my limbs. The passageway narrowed, and I could feel the oppressive energy nipping at my heels, a sinister cold creeping under my skin. Just as I prepared to leap through an opening, a fissure that glimmered like starlight amid a collapsing universe, a low growl rumbled through the clap of darkness. The shadows thickened, swirling as if whipped by an unseen tempest. Through that shroud, a gargantuan form emerged, its silhouette lined with the flickering remnants of long-buried nightmares. The beast's eyes, radiant and malevolent, bore into my soul, unveiling every hidden fear. It spoke deep, thunderous, and woven from the very essence of despair. "Your choice is made," it roared, contorting reality around it. "You shall join your lost friends. Stay and be delivered, or flee and bear the consequences." The ground beneath me buckled as ancient curses collided with insatiable hunger. My heart exploded with uncertainty. The light beyond danced tantalizingly close as shadows clawed at my ankles. Just as I made to leap, everything froze. The air seized, time stopped, and every fragment of my being tensed against the decision still rippling within me. What would I choose? Eternal despair? Or a chance to save Jake and Aaron, regardless of the abyss that awaited? I had but one moment left, and everything that followed would hinge upon it, a single heartbeat that echoed like the toll of a grim bell. And as I teetered on the brink between the warm light of hope and the unbearable cold of darkness, the shadows gathered closer, whispering promises of annihilation, and just beyond them, I saw something shift, an amorphous horror emerging, clad in the rotting skins of the damned, crafting an obliterating choice of my very identity. Without warning, I felt the ground give way beneath me, and I plunged into the void, the screams of the children ricocheting around me, mingling with the shadows of the once lost, now enslaved souls. Their words churned within, igniting an unfathomable terror, and as I fell deeper, the shadows writhed, heralding the end and the beginning of my fate. And then, utter quiet enveloped me, a silence so profound it felt like the deepest grave. The scream that erupted from my lips was swallowed whole by the shadows, leaving nothing but darkness and the dawning realization that I had not been the first, nor would I be the last, to dance with the beast lurking just beyond the veil of choice. The silence was deceptive, a lull before a storm of unspeakable horrors to come. I drifted, weightless, immersed in darkness, and as I lingered in the void, memories flickered through my mind like dying embers. Jake's laugh, Aaron's fearless spirit. Their faces haunted me, each thought a tether pulling me back to a reality that felt increasingly distant. In the depths, time lost all significance. Fear and dread became my only companions. Then, as I floated through the desolation, a distant hum reverberated through the air, a sinister melody that thrummed along my spine, throwing me against the edges of my conscience. It was a song of despair and longing, and it beckoned me to follow its twisted refrain. "Help us," it whispered, the words clear yet laden with a hollow cry that seeped through the cracks of my resolve. "Join us before the darkness takes you, before you lose everything." Suddenly, the darkness began to swirl. Faces ripped from the shadows emerged, twisting in monstrous shapes, each a tortured scream caught in the cacophony of the damned. They reached out, their fingers elongating and merging into tendrils that pulsed with an otherworldly hunger. I felt their cold breath, a chilling wind coaxing me closer, close enough to taste despair. "No," I gasped, the word a fragile echo against the numbing symphony of torment that surrounded me. But the melodies of the lost grew louder, wrapping around me with clammy fingers, tugging at my sanity. "You promised, remember? You wanted to be free." Suddenly, with a sickening lurch, the darkness erupted, thrusting me into a stark, desolate landscape. I stumbled forward, now surrounded by sprawling graves, the air thick with the stench of decay and whispers of lost souls. Each headstone bore a name, an agonizing tribute to those who had succumbed to the shadows. I searched frantically, hoping to find Jake and Aaron among the rows. Yet I was met with only lifeless stone and shadows blending seamlessly into the night. Just beyond the graveyard, a grotesque, flickering light drew my gaze. An old wooden cabin stood unsteadily, its windows gaping like empty eyes, beckoning with a sinister glow. I hesitated, but instinct propelled me forward. I had to reach out to Jake and Aaron. I felt their pull like a phantom thread guiding me deeper into the malevolence. As I approached, the door creaked open slowly, revealing insidious darkness within. "Come in," a voice rasped, dripping with malice, echoing from the shadows. It was eerily familiar, yet twisted a grotesque mockery of Aaron's tone. I hesitated, dread coiling tightly around my chest. "Jake? Aaron?" My voice trembled, swallowed by the void. I stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind me with a resounding thud, sealing my fate. The room warped, shifting into a nightmarish tableau of memories, my past wrapped in sorrow, playing before me like an endless reel, joyous moments twisted into grotesque parodies. "Aren't you glad you're here?" The sweet, taunting chime of children filled the air, weaving seamlessly through the fabric of dread that enveloped me. Their giggles broke apart into howls as the shadows congregated behind me, an unholy congregation sharpening their gnashing teeth. Eyes filled with unquenchable hunger, I spun around to face a wall lined with mirrors, each one showing a reflection that bore a horror of its own. In one, I saw Jake, his eyes wide with terror as he clawed helplessly at the glass, the other side tantalizingly close yet forever out of reach. In another, Erin's face twisted in shock, her mouth forming silent screams. "This is what happens," a voice hissed from the darkness, curling around my ears. "When you step into the abyss without understanding the price." Desperation clawed at my soul. "Let them go," I shouted, but my voice was swallowed by the cacophony, fueled by the whispers of the accusing past. The shadow moved among the poisoned reflections, coalescing into a demonic figure cloaked in shadows, its eyes gleaming with ancient hunger. "You dare defy us?" it growled, and the very walls trembled at its voice. "You have danced with the abyss. Now embrace what you've become, lost, forever entwined in the dark." With that, the mirrors exploded, shattering into hollow shards, each piece shrieking with sins unforgotten. I felt the shards reach out, slicing through the bonds of reality, sending glimmers of memories cascading around me like tortured fireflies. That I in the chaos, I caught a fleeting glimpse of Aaron and Jake, their silhouettes flickering like candle flames in the tempest. Panic surged. "Fight!" I cried out, feeling their souls attempting to break free from some unseen shackle. But the shadows loomed closer, and I could feel their grip tightening around my throat as despair seeped deep into my marrow. The demon growled, its form swelling larger, the air itself seeming to crackle with dark energy. "You will join the horror," it snarled, tendrils spiraling toward me like grasping limbs from the depths of hell. And just as I turned, hoping against all against the dark maw looming behind me, a horrific realization dawned. What if I am meant to stay? The thought was a slow, treacherous poison as the shadows surged forward, and the air grew near suffocating. As an ocean of inky darkness engulfed me, I felt a piercing chill, sharp enough to cut through the panic. Something was lurking just beneath the layers of despair, primal and ancient. And then, without warning, as if time had stopped, the demon spoke one last time, its voice a low rumble. Choose, mortal, the abyss or your friends, but know this, once the bond is severed, there will be no return. In that terrible moment, I was swept in the abyss, plunging deeper into the void, unable to ignore the screams from the mirrored shards that taunted me. And as the world dissolved around me into a torrential whirlwind of darkness, a single voice from the shadows pierced my heart, unmistakably familiar, filled with dread and urgency. Don't leave us. I reached out into the void, but something icy clutched my wrist. The faces of the lost exploded forth, a kaleidoscope of despair, and as they engulfed me, I felt my own screams stifled by the suffocating shadows, burying my soul deeper into the interminable dark. The last thing I heard was a whisper in the agonizing dark. The pact is sealed, and then silence. The silence throbbed in my ears, a deafening reminder of the void I now inhabited. I was no longer merely an observer in this horror. I was ensnared, tethered to it in ways that transcended space and time. The echo of the demon's voice lingered like a death knell, reverberating through my consciousness as I fought to reclaim control over my shattered psyche. That I blinked against the darkness, drawing in shallow breaths as the familiar faces flickered at the edges of my mind, like fireflies fading into the night. Each visage held an ounce of hope, a flicker of what I once knew. I could only cling to their essence, desperate to stave off the encroaching shadows that echoed from beyond the abyss. Then dread coiled within me, tightening its grip as I realized the shadows were consuming my memories. I could feel them coaxing me to surrender, their whispers promising peace if only I would let go of the light. Stay with us, they murmured, their voices a haunting melody that wormed its way into my thoughts, an embrace that felt like suffocation. As I traversed the inky expanse, an unbearable longing surged through me, an insatiable urge to find Aaron and Jake. But each attempt to summon them was met with anguished cries, distorted ripples in the thick darkness. Help us! A cacophony of voices rose, their combination a symphony of urgency echoing against the walls of despair. They were there. Somehow, I could feel them struggling against the same overpowering pull. My heart raced, every fiber of my being igniting with a palpable urgency. I stumbled through the dark, chasing the ethereal whispers that beat like a restless drum beneath the torment. Aaron, Jake, I called, trembling as shadows danced around me, flickering in and out of existence, coaxing me to lose myself within their embrace. Suddenly, a sickening jolt propelled me forward as I crashed into a wall of cold, gelatinous darkness. It writhed beneath my touch, and the shadows surged, pulling me into their depths. Screams tore through me, inhuman, desperate, engulfed by pain and loss. I clawed at the murky surface, feeling something tugging at my core, a thread of anguished power that threaded through the nothingness. Then, from the chaotic swirl of darkness, an image emerged, a vision of the cabin, its crooked silhouette clawing towards the sky. But it was no longer merely a building. The wooden structure pulsated with a foul life of its own, its walls bleeding shadows that whispered sweet vile things. That I was drawn, against my better judgment, as if the very wood and nails called my name, beckoning me into its depths. With every feeble ounce of courage, I willed myself back to the cabin, praying against all reason that it was somehow the key to find Jake and Aaron. As I reached the door, it creaked open with haunting familiarity, revealing a corridor draped in ephemeral fog. The air turned slick and heavy, wrapped in scents of long-forgotten despair. A compulsion seized me, guiding my feet inside as I drifted through the threshold, and the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me with my fears. The walls pulsed in time with a rhythm that echoed my racing heart. I was surrounded by hostages, shadows caught in a violent waltz. Each figure bore a scarred feature, remnants of their battle against the grotesque demon that ruled with a cruel grip. Driving deeper, I became acutely aware of the eyes watching me from every corner, each flickering in hypnotic terror. Then I heard it, a soft sobbing layered beneath the twisted whispers, a sound that splintered my resolve. I turned on my heel, following the mournful cries toward a dimly lit chamber nearby. Within its depths, a ghastly sight awaited. There, suspended in the thick fog of desolation, were Jake and Aaron, unmoving, their faces pale and devoid of hope. Ropes of shadow bound their limbs, stretching thin as though drawn by raspy hands from the abyss. "Help us," they hissed, voices barely above a whisper, entreating me with a desperate gaze that pierced my heart. The darkness gathered, swirling in a cloying grip, the demon's presence looming behind them. "It's a trap, don't come closer." Panic surged through me like a wildfire, igniting the instinct to save them. I moved toward them just as an ominous chuckle shattered the air. The demon emerged from the shadows, its form grotesque and undulating with hunger. "Do you see? They encourage your approach, but what will be your price, foolish mortal?" It taunted, teeth glimmering like shards of glass. "Let them go. You have no power here," I screamed, though my voice trembled, filled with the weight of doubt. The demon merely laughed, a sound that reverberated through my very soul, saturating me with despair. The shadows clawed at my feet, anchoring me in place. I struggled against their suffocating grip, but was met with an impossible realization. The more I fought, the stronger their hold became. "Choose," the demon hissed as the shadows behind me thickened, coiling around me like snakes. With each passing moment, Jake and Aaron appeared closer, yet I felt myself slipping a dangerous tug-of-war that threatened to unravel my very essence. "We need you. Don't lose yourself." Aaron's voice penetrated the chaos, each word like daggers in my heart. As the last shreds of my will began to disintegrate, I was torn between the shadows and the anguished figures of my friends. In that moment, I saw the glimmer of something in the corner of my eye, a path of light flickering just beyond the encroaching dark. It was a manifestation of hope. "Take my hand," I shouted, extending my arm toward Jake and Aaron. The shadows roared in rage, and the demon's smile widened, and then everything went black as I felt a visceral tug of energy erupting from the depths of the shadows, pulling my very soul apart. The last thing I perceived through the oppressive blackness was an undeniable whisper: "The choice has been made," and then I plunged. I cocooned myself in the abyss, trembling as I braced for impact, expecting a crash against some concrete reality. Instead, I fell into an endless sensation of weightlessness, spiraling through the slippery tendrils of shadow. I felt as if each thread of darkness snaked around me, probing into the very marrow of my being, mining my deepest fears and regrets. The uneasy stillness rang in my ears, pulsing with the cadence of my racing heart, a feeble reminder of the sanity I clung to. Flashes of light blinked sporadically like dying stars, illuminating fleeting snapshots of personal trauma, the laughter of childhood friends, the warmth of sunny days long gone, and the faces I fought so hard to keep in memory. Every image invoked a fresh wave of longing and grief, which only further invigorated the swirling darkness around me. "Make the choice," a voice bled from the shadows, raw and jagged. "What are you willing to sacrifice to save your little friends?" I struggled against the freezing grip, fighting the icy tendrils that tried to pull me in every direction. The voice belonged to the demon, its tone dripping with malice, a grim reminder of the choice I couldn't comprehend. My friends were still out there, and I had to save them, even if it meant tearing apart my very essence to do so. Suddenly, a piercing scream sliced through the silence, shattering my reverie. I recognized that scream. It was Erin. "Help us," she pleaded, her voice tangled amidst the shadows, a frantic sound that danced through the void like a fading siren. The walls of darkened memory twisted around me, reflecting the conflict that festered inside my mind. Would it be worth it if I betrayed myself to deliver them? In that chilling moment of indecision, I felt warm droplets slide down my cheeks. Slick and thick they were, tears, an alien sensation amidst the consuming dread. Now, the demon crooned, its distorted visage swimming into view, illuminated by a flash of agonizing light. "Tears are the currency of despair. What do you surrender?" I choked on my breath, grappling with the reality of my decision. The demon's presence loomed heavy, pulsating like a malign heartbeat. It reveled in my hesitation, and I could nearly taste its satisfaction. I couldn't give more. I felt as though I would shatter entirely if I surrendered anything else to this insatiable darkness. Then, a haunting laughter cascaded through the shadows, echoing my fears back to me. Look around. Do you see who else has given everything? What does it take to break free? To be the savior you wish to be? Suddenly, the shadows erupted, a whirlwind of form and substance, unfurling into a twisted vision. Those shackled souls I had seen before, people trapped in the cabin so long ago, their faces twisted in agony as they screamed for release. You save them at your own risk, or allow their torment to continue indefinitely. Which will it be? I recoiled, nausea gripping my stomach as I saw the terror etched across their features. No, I cried, but the shadows curled tighter, the voices rising in a chorus of anguish that pulsed with the rhythm of my heart. Stop, I shouted, summoning the last of my courage, confronting the chaos swirling around me. I won't choose despair. The demon hissed a sharp laugh, and in an instant, the cacophony of trapped souls fell silent, their pleading eyes shifting toward me, watching with the weight of their own despair. I felt their agony snaking into my soul, threatening to suffocate the last pulse of hope within me. In that moment, I felt a piercing sensation in my chest, a heat that pulsed, illuminating the shadows just enough to reveal a truth I had been neglecting. I wasn't alone. Aaron and Jake were still calling for me, their voices undeterred by the demon's chokehold. It's not just you. We're still here. We need you, they cried, a collective force of desperation pulling me back into focus. But my connection to them felt tenuous, as if the fabric of reality was stretching to its breaking point. I slammed my eyes shut, blocking everything out in a final effort, and diving into that vivid light, its warmth enveloping me, urging me to embrace it. Then, like flames licking at the dark, I grasped the tendril of hope and pulled. I choose to fight, I screamed, flooding the shadows with light, igniting a furious blaze that began to dissolve their grasp on me. Yet, the demon's laughter echoed louder, shaking the very foundation of this realm. Flee if you wish, but you will pay dearly for your defiance. As darkness clawed at the edges of the brightness I conjured, a sudden, blinding light erupted like a star being born. The shadows recoiled in agony as the light illuminated my final choice. In the dawning glow, the spirits around me erupted in desperate screams, their forms fading as they shattered under the pressure of freedom. You can't leave. You have to stay, they wailed, and my heart seized with dread, thinking of Jake and Aaron, still lost. Just as the last shadow screamed, and the light reached its zenith, the floor beneath me crumbled, and I plummeted, engulfed in light, darkness swirling around me until I couldn't tell where the veil of shadow ended and light began. And then I landed wrenchingly, joltingly somewhere cold and familiar. I gasped and dragged myself to a sitting position, the reality crashing into me with its foreboding presence that I was inside the cabin, walls pulsating with the shadows that barely contained the malevolent laughter echoing from the corners, my friends nowhere in sight. But just beyond the door, I could hear whispers, their muffled cries vibrating through the wood. Help us, a voice, oh so familiar, shifted into a chilling plea. That I stood, heart hammering painfully in my chest, stepping towards the door, gripping the handle with a mixture of disbelief and dread. But as the handle turned, the shadowy forms condensed, enveloping the room like a thick fog, and a cold gust swept through, whispering, "You shouldn't have done that." My pulse quickened as the whispers crescendoed, revealing a truth I hadn't anticipated. Some debts can never be repaid, and choices carry far darker consequences than I had ever imagined. The door swung open to reveal a nightmare beyond comprehension. In an instant, the world spiraled once more into chaos, and I knew I had only just begun to uncover the true horror of what we had awakened. The room spun into focus, shadows dancing maliciously on the walls as I stood paralyzed in the threshold. My heart thudded, echoes of dread against my ribs. Where are they? The walls seemed to pulse in answer, the darkness breathing, whispering secrets I was not ready to hear. Panicking, I stepped inside, the door slamming shut behind me with a finality that made every nerve in my body scream. The cabin felt like a living entity, pulsating with grotesque memories. I turned back to the door, but it was no longer a way out. There was only a smooth, lifeless surface where it had stood, entwined in shadows. Just ahead, dim light flickered, casting grotesque shadows against the walls. I tread cautiously toward it, drawn by an instinct that buzzed in my spine like an electric current. The whispers grew louder, a symphony of haunting wails entreating me to listen, to understand. "Help us," a voice implored from the darkness, and I froze. I knew that voice. "Aaron! Jake!" I screamed into the shadows, urgency pouring from my lips. Their names hung in the air, thick like fog. Suddenly, shapes emerged from the billowing shadows, figures distorted by despair. The spectral faces twisted with anguish, mouths stretching in silent screams. I recoiled, memories igniting wild images of what had transpired, fingers grasping, cries echoing in tumultuous despair. My heart constricted. How had I become entangled in this web of horror? When the voice twisted, familiar yet tainted. "Gwen, you chose to step into the void. You agreed to sever ties." It was the voice of the woman, the one who had led me down this path of destruction. Shadows stood languidly around her. Her hollow eyes glowed with unholy light, reflecting depths of sorrow I wasn't prepared to confront. "What do you want from me?" I begged. "I'm not part of this." But they only laughed, a discordant symphony of broken souls. "You must choose, dear girl. Who will you save? Who will you abandon?" The words slid through the air like velvet, oozing through the cracks of my resolve. Suddenly, Jake and Aaron appeared, their forms flickering like candle flames. They looked pale, frightened, trapped in different corners of the room, shadows writhing ominously around them. "Gwen!" Aaron screamed, her eyes widening in terror. "It's a trick. She'll betray us," Jake added, writhing against unyielding forms that clasped around him like iron chains. "Help us!" they echoed, voices combined in a chorus of anguish. But the darkness constricted around my heart, overwhelming the rational part of me. "No, I won't let her take you," I shouted, facing the woman, but her skeletal finger gestured toward the growing shadows swirling around my friends. "Your choice is clear. A life for a life. Or perhaps neither shall escape," she threatened, her voice sinister and smooth, like silk weaving through a spider's web. That a frantic decision surged through me, jarring. "I will save them," I cried, feeling the weight of each desperate heartbeat thrum into the atmosphere, a pulsating desperation that tangles souls in a web of torment. But then the horror unveiled. The very shadows pulled back, revealing fading faces morphing into my own features, a million reflections stitched from shards of my own despair. "You already chose, Gwen. You belong to this darkness. And now so do they." Her voice crescendoed into manic laughter, an echo of betrayal that clawed at my insides. In that moment, my heart sank as I realized the truth that had always been lurking just beyond my grasp. The darkness was not simply a force of nature. It was me, the vile emotions, shadows of my choices, simmering beneath a facade of camaraderie and strength. As the whispers of despair approached, curling around them like vines, I could feel their fears igniting the raw essence of my own pain. "No, I refuse to be part of this," I shrieked, struggling against the weight of nightmare gripping me, but feeling myself pulled, twisted by choices I had yet to consciously make. Tears streamed down my cheeks, streaming from the pain of knowing I was bound to their fates. Suddenly, a blinding flash ignited the room. Light surged through the dark, ripping apart the shadows, if only for a moment. Images of the past loomed before me, birthdays, celebrations, joyous recollections bound with laughter, each moment a tether stretching across time. I could almost taste freedom, and then the darkness returned, swirling back, hungry for my despair. The woman smirked, her presence looming like the bitter chill of winter. "There can only be one way out, darling. One will depart, while the others remain forever ensnared in the shadows." "No," I yelled, desperation clawing at my throat. "You can't have them." My pleas echoed back, swallowed by the insatiable void. But their eyes locked onto mine, and the weight of their suffering pierced me to the bone. It was in that moment of raw connection I realized, for every decision they had made together, and each silent moment of betrayal carved into time, every shared laugh and hug, had woven a complex tapestry of choice that could not be undone. With a defiant scream, I lunged forward, desperate to wrap my arms around them both. "I won't let you take them," I shouted, As if my words could unravel the darkness suffocating us, the sudden roar erupted from the shadows, sending a visceral shockwave through the cabin. Fool, you misunderstand the price of escape. The shadows twisted, morphing, wrapping tighter and tighter, and I felt their presence coil around us, each frightened gasp tightening the bonds holding my heart captive. Then, in a paralyzing instant, it all merged into a grotesque convergence. The ones we loved shattered into infinite reflections, fracturing reality until nothing solid remained. I closed my eyes against the despair that threatened to tear apart my essence, feeling the world collapse beneath my feet. The last thing I felt was the sensation of their warmth melting away. Gwen Aaron's pleading calls echoed, mixing into a haunting chorus of despair, the sound reverberating like a ghostly lullaby. In the final moment of anguish, I was met with a haunting whisper from the woman, trailing off as the abyss consumed me. Welcome to the darkness where choices whisper nothing is ever as it seems. And then silence enveloped me, a chilling, endless void of emptiness. But as the darkness swallowed my voice, I felt restless tendrils shift around me, through the shadows whispering truths. This wasn't merely an ending. The terror within had just begun.